Module Overview. In the pursuit of holistic and sustainable rural development, it is essential to recognize the roles, challenges, and contributions of diverse demographic groups, particularly women, youth, and marginalized populations. These groups have traditionally been underrepresented or overlooked in the planning, implementation, and evaluation of rural development programs and extension services. However, evidence from global and local development efforts has shown that inclusive strategies that integrate the voices and needs of these populations lead to more resilient, equitable, and productive rural communities. 1. Understanding the role of gender in rural development. Gender refers to the social, economic, and cultural attributes associated with being male or female, and these roles affect access to resources, decision-making power, and labor participation. In most rural societies, women are central to food production, household welfare, and natural resource management. Yet they face significant inequalities in land ownership, education, credit access, and political participation. Key points include gender-based division of labor in agriculture and rural households, structural inequalities in access to productive resources, the feminization of agriculture and its implications, the impact of patriarchal systems on extension services, gender-sensitive indicators for monitoring development projects. Gender mainstreaming in rural development involves conducting gender analysis during project planning, integrating gender disaggregated data, promoting women's leadership in community-based organizations, training extension officers on gender-responsive practices, enforcing legal frameworks that promote gender equality. 2. Youth engagement in rural development. The youth population between the ages of 15 to 35, depending on national definitions, represents a demographic dividend for rural economies. However, rural youth often face high unemployment, limited access to land, and minimal involvement in decision-making processes. This section examines the challenges facing rural youth, migration, unemployment, underemployment, and limited voice, the role of technology, entrepreneurship, and digital agriculture in youth engagement, vocational training and agribusiness development for youth empowerment, policies and programs designed to retain youth in agriculture, e.g., Empower Agri-Youth Initiatives, strengthening rural youth organizations and networks for advocacy. Engaging rural youth requires tailored extension approaches, peer-to-peer learning, ICT tools, demonstration farms, supportive policies on land access, credit, and business incubation, recognition of youth as change agents and innovators in climate-smart agriculture. 3. Inclusion of marginalized and vulnerable populations. Marginalized groups in rural areas include persons with disabilities, PWDs, elderly individuals, ethnic minorities, internally displaced persons, IDPs, landless laborers, single mothers, and widows. These populations are often excluded from formal development processes due to physical, cultural, or institutional barriers. Challenges include lack of data and representation, physical inaccessibility of extension services, stereotypes and discrimination, exclusion from leadership and decision-making roles, strategies for inclusion, participatory rural appraisal, PRA, methods that involve marginalized voices, disability, inclusive rural infrastructure and technologies, social protection schemes and affirmative policies, inclusive value chains, and cooperatives, monitoring equity outcomes through inclusion-sensitive indicators. 4. The role of extension services in addressing inequality. Extension services are critical to bridging the gap between knowledge and practice. However, traditional extension models have often failed to reach women, youth, and marginalized groups. Transforming extension to become inclusive requires training extension workers in inclusive communication and sensitivity, recruiting female and youth extension agents, adopting flexible delivery methods, mobile-based pictorial tools, local languages, customizing content to the needs of specific groups, e.g., childcare support for women trainees, collaborating with NGOs, community-based organizations, and faith-based groups. 5. Policy and institutional frameworks. Governmental and institutional reforms are vital for driving inclusive rural development. International instruments such as CEDAW, SDG Goal 5, Gender Equality, and African Youth Charter provide the foundation for national policy. Key instruments and actions include gender action plans in agricultural ministries, youth agricultural empowerment programs, land reform policies that secure tenure for women and youth, institutional accountability frameworks for equity monitoring, interagency collaboration to ensure cross-sectoral inclusion. 6. Case studies and best practices. Ethiopia's gender-responsive agricultural extension program, Nigeria's UWIN and N-Power agro schemes, India's Self-Employed Women's Association, SEWA, Uganda's Youth Livelihood Program, YLP, Disability Inclusive Farmer Field Schools in Kenya. 7. Challenges and the way forward. Despite progress, the inclusion of women, youth, and marginalized groups still faces persistent socio-cultural barriers, weak implementation of inclusive policies, inadequate funding for grassroots organizations, gender-blind monitoring and evaluation systems. The way forward: strengthen gender/youth/M&E mainstreaming units in ministries, promote inclusive digital extension models, foster cross-generational rural leadership platforms, fund and support grassroots organizations advocating for equity, build robust data systems with disaggregated and intersectional metrics,